So everyone and their mom has been flipping a tit over this new Puss in Boots movie. It's like the novelty of it actually being good tickles our weird internet sensibilities.
Why is one of the best depictions of anxiety I've ever seen in a movie from an anthropomorphic cat in the fucking Shrek universe?
Puss in Boots? What? What do you think we're gonna? You think I care about Puss in Boots? It's an amazing movie.
And it didn't feel infantilizing. It didn't feel like it was a stupid movie for babies.
Well, I was expecting some garbage baby boo. Well, I expected some cookie cutter baby garbage, but I actually enjoyed it. What?
How novel! How intriguing!
Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish follows the titular Puss, a legendary hero, on his journey to restore his 9 lives, by being the first person to locate a magical fallen star that grants the finder one wish. In addition to competition from other star seekers, Puss also has to avoid death itself, who takes the form of a cool wolf that stalks Puss throughout the film's runtime. Puss realizes the real treasure was the friends he made along the way, and besides a few unimportant casualties, everyone lives happily ever after. It's painfully trite when I put it that way, but it's actually compelling. What? Part 1. Death and Courage. In this universe, cats have 9 lives, so when a doctor tells Puss that he's on his last, Puss is forced to confront the concept of his own mortality for the first time. Death, depicted as a cool wolf person guy, framed as the only enemy that Puss can never beat. One whose dark embrace is inevitable and unescapable, no matter how legendary you think yourself to be. And it's coming for us all, you included. But not right now. So don't worry about it. Puss is haunted by his fear of death throughout the film, to the point where he's basically hallucinating and having panic attacks. This fear is humanity's rite of passage. We all have to make peace with the fact that we're all gonna die someday, or live in existential horror of the concept of that.
I feel like this isn't really a controversial statement, but the concept of death really freaks me out.
I mean, like, everyone has these thoughts, you know? 17 or 18 was where I first had that, like, realization, like, oh, I'm actually gonna die. And it scared the fuck out of me.
Just know that we're all gonna die one day.
Jesus Christ.
We see Puss grappling with the literal fear of death, as well as the existential fear that one experiences, battling a physical representation of the strife one goes through when confronting their own mortality. And before anyone gets on my case about this, I know the wolf said he's not a representation for anything, and that that's a cool badass moment or whatever, but in that moment he's speaking to Puss, not the audience. The wolf is speaking within the confines of the canon of the fictional universe. He's not making any statements about how to interpret this art, he's just saying within the universe he is death. That's all that means. Maybe if the writer said that, but the wolf is not making any statements on how to interpret this piece of art that he exists in. He's just making a statement of the fictional world that he's a part of. I'm allowed to interpret things.
Would you get off my back? You sound like my dang dad.
So how does Puss overcome his fear of death and live happily ever after? To help understand this, we can analyze the differences between his first encounter with death versus Puss's last encounter with death, then attribute those discrepancies to account for the different outcomes. Fuck me, I am such a nerd. Why do I spend my time like this? When Puss first battles with death, he is living a shallow life characterized by partying and praise from adoring fans, lacking any meaningful connections in his life. During the fight, he's seemingly outmatched, his life flashes before his eyes, and then he runs away in response to his fear. In Puss's last encounter with death in the film, Puss is living a more sentimental life with meaningful connections. During the fight, he is seemingly outmatched, his life flashes before his eyes again, but this time, memories of his friends come up, which give him the strength to not let fear of death stop him from living right. It seems like Puss doesn't actually get over his fear of death, but rather his fear takes a backseat to what's really important to him, the people around him, and his connections to those people. So having meaningful relationships doesn't make you suddenly not fear death, but rather it contributes to preventing that fear controlling your life. Death was only after Puss when he was spiritually weak, and once he started to become spiritually strong, death lost interest. Is that a metaphor? Maybe? I don't know. In the start of the movie, it's communicated that Puss is so brave he laughs in the face of death.
I am Puss in Boots! I laugh at death! You see?
But not being afraid isn't actually what bravery is. Bravery is about being scared, but still doing something in spite of your fear or apprehension. All the accolades and feats of bravery, putting his life on the line, weren't actually bravery because he didn't fear death. There were no consequences in Puss's mind. In truth, we can observe that everything Puss is legitimately afraid of is something he runs away from time and time again, whether that's fear of death or whether that's fear of commitment. It's only after figuring out what's truly important to you can your fear of death be outshunned by your love of life. Or something like that. Maybe.
I may also be wrong about most of this.
I'm not over my fear of death. I have panic attacks where I feel like I'm gonna die, and no matter how many friends I think about in that moment, I'm still horribly afraid in a way that truly fucks with me like nothing else can. But you know, I just try not to think about it that much because I have movies to talk about. Part 2, The Last Wish. Something about the concept of the last wish makes my brain go brr or whatever. Something about it is really alluring. It's like I'm a pirate and the movie's a siren desperately beckoning me to an early grave. Except instead of death, my cruel fate is talking about Puss in Boots 2 for a long time. With the exception of Therapy Dog, every character is looking to satisfy a certain desire. I say desire because what is a wish if not a desire that we dress up to look more eloquent and fancy than what it actually is?
Oh, look, a shooting star. How eloquent, how whimsical. I wish I could have some pictures.
I want to take a closer look at the specific desires of each character and see where they come from. Put on your thinking caps. Not really, this is very straightforward. You don't have to think too much about this. Goldie's wish is for a real family. It's explained in flashback that Goldie was an orphan who stumbled into the Three Bears' house in her youth. We see young Goldie draw herself into an illustration of a family from a fairy tale book. I think we can reasonably attribute her longing for a real family to her initial pain of abandonment in her youth.
Hey gang, just reviewing the footage right now, and it's also possible that Goldie is just, the hurt is from loneliness rather than abandonment. We don't actually get to see her exact origin, so it's possible that she just was always an orphan and never knew the pain of abandonment. It's also possible that she was just lonely, and that's where that hurt was coming from.
I'm getting a family! That's what? A proper family! Then everything will be just right.
Kitty's wish is to have someone she can trust. Kitty reveals that a large part of her life is characterized by betrayal.
Whenever I've let my guard down, I've been double-crossed, declawed, played, and betrayed.
Most notably when Puss doesn't show for their wedding. We can reasonably conclude that her desire for someone to trust stems from the pain of betrayal she's experienced throughout her life. If she can have someone she can trust, she can avoid the pain of betrayal.
Someone, anyone I could trust. In my whole life, I've never had that.
Puss's wish is for all his 9 lives back. Puss's fear of death forces him to retire his life of adventuring, partying, being a legend, stuff that Puss thought gave his life purpose. And without that, he feels empty and is suffering at that cat sanctuary. We can reasonably attribute the desire to get his lives back to relieve the pain of lack of fulfillment.
I need to get my lives back. Without them, I am not... I am not...
What? The legend?
Jack's wish is for exclusive ownership of all magic. In a flashback, we see Jack dancing and singing to bring in customers for his parents' pie cart. His performance is met with disinterest, and the few customers around leave to give their attention to a magic puppet doing a similar performance in the cart next to theirs, leaving Jack jealous. So it's funny that this guy's villain origin story is just not getting enough attention as a child. And he's voiced by funny man John. But put yourself in Jack's shoes for a moment. Why do we think it's important that young Jack gets the attention of the customers? Is it to make his parents proud by being useful for their business? If that were the case, he would probably be feeling more guilt than jealousy in that situation. To me, the jealousy implies that it's the attention that the puppet's getting over Jack that's what's bothering him. So to grown-up Jack, it makes sense that he's able to act so immorally because in his eyes, he's acting in the name of justice. A naive justice for the unfair pain Jack felt as a child. And in his eyes, the only way to right this wrong is to hoard all the magic in the world for himself. But it's not actually about the magic. It's about the pain. It's about the attention he so desperately tried to receive and put all this effort into working for that he couldn't get, that he wasn't getting, and that he noticed others were getting just for possessing magic. And if we look at the way that the parents are reacting to Jack's performance, we see complete disinterest and maybe even minor annoyance. Do you think parents who are disinterested and annoyed in their children are going to be able to give them the attention and care that they need to feel loved? If my parents were actively disinterested in me as a child, I would probably internalize that as, my parents are who I look up to, and they don't care about me, so I must not be valuable as a person. And I'm reminded that I'm not good enough, and it causes me pain when I see other people getting the attention that I really want. The root of all of this is hurt that Jack feels for failing to get attention after putting in so much effort. And that hurt takes the form of jealousy and resentment towards all people who have magic. Because in Jack's mind, everyone else is getting what he needs just because they have magic, and that's not fair. So this is really naive logic, but in Jack's mind, if he hoards all the magic, it means he doesn't have to be subjected to the pain of seeing other people get attention for having magic. Or, even better, he can finally get some attention if he gets all the magic and everyone else is below him. He's finally elevated from his status of being insufficient as a person.
Little Jack Horner didn't have any magic. He was a pathetic, buttered baker's boy.
With that being said, are you noticing a trend? Every character's desire is kind of rooted in some sort of pain or suffering. They've all suffered to some extent and want to either alleviate that suffering or prevent further suffering down the line. Everyone wants to avoid that hurt, except the dog. The dog wants nothing. Part 3, Therapy Dog. Who could forget good old Therapy Dog? Not me. Not me. When he was first introduced, I thought he was going to be like a Minion/Mort type character, you know, a comic relief character whose whole deal is being really annoyingly positive. And I was right. He is that. And so much worse. He's ugly, cringy, painfully optimistic, naive, and lacking in self-awareness. But in spite of that, when I finished the movie, I ended up liking him? What? In the same way that the wolf is a physical manifestation of death, in my mind, the dog is a physical manifestation of therapy. Hey, you thought I'd make it through this video without talking about therapy, did you? In your dreams, loser. I'm gonna mention therapy every video until you actually go to it.
Therapy helps. Therapy helps.
Therapy Dog's background is one characterized by pain and misery, yet none of it seems to bother him. His family neglected and tried to murder him, and he's fine with it. Imagine you went through what the dog did. I don't care how much of a manly man, red-pilled, soy-pilled dude you think you are, you would be fucked. And a large element of therapy is the process of unfucking yourself up with the guidance of a professional who's trained to help unfuck you up. But a lot of people are really turned off by the idea of receiving therapy. Wonder why? I wonder why. To me, this is a really clever use of the annoying little comic relief character. Because he's supposed to be really off-putting to match how some of us are really off-put by therapy. Plus, the main character's Puss, this dude who really wants to live up to the legend. Someone who's totally against receiving any kind of help. And cats don't like dogs, so that also, when Therapy Dog offers to let Puss rub his nasty belly? When Therapy Dog offers to let Puss rub its gross belly, Puss is completely put off. Now, I wouldn't feel comfortable rubbing that dog's nasty belly either, but I think it illustrates a bigger point about people who put up emotional walls against going to therapy. I think for a lot of people, some therapeutic practices are off-putting at first. Therapy involves being vulnerable, revisiting past negative experiences, talking about your feelings, and accepting help from others. The last two things are especially relevant to Puss because we see consistent resistance in him from sharing his feelings or asking others for help.
You okay?
See, I am good. So good.
I think a lot of it has to do with his ego trying to protect his identity of the legend. The legend can't be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a sign of weakness, and the legend can't be weak. The legend doesn't need help from anyone else. The legend is independent and competent and can do anything on its own. He walks alone. The legend can't go to therapy. Going to therapy means admitting that there might be something wrong with you, and there can't be anything wrong with the legend. The legend is perfect. The legend's a man who could deal with his own problems on his own.
He didn't fucking pull over and call a psychiatrist and run to the pharmacist, throw back a bottle of pills. You fucking dealt with it like a man!
No, dingus. There's nothing wrong with going to therapy or taking psychiatric medication. But joke or not, it's these type of attitudes that lead to people like Puss in Boots unnecessarily suffering because their pride won't let them get help. Both Boots and Kitty are so caught up in themselves and their desires, they can't appreciate the value of Therapy Dog. They don't respect Therapy Dog. They're only able to see a cringy little minion. They take advantage of it, they mistreat it, they manipulate it just in pursuit of their desires. It's only later that they see the value of therapeutic practices when they have to get first-hand experience with a pocket full of posies trial. Although it seems pretty on the nose, I think it's actually a really important lesson that smelling the flowers is like an allegory for gratitude, or appreciating small things in life. So to illustrate the benefits of gratitude, it's story time. I was dancing to nothing. There's no music playing. If I put music in there, it's because I wanted it would be weird if I was just silent. So flashback to my first time staying in a psychiatric clinic. I remember them giving us this folder, and within the folder there was like a little pamphlet diary thingy that was called your like gratitude journal, and you were meant to there was like instructions to write 3 things you were grateful for every day during your stay there. My initial reaction to that pamphlet was actually judgment. Being thankful? What the fuck? How is that gonna help me with what I'm dealing with now? I'm in a fucking psychiatric clinic. What is being grateful for gonna change anything? So I like to look at the world through a lens of evolution, and if we're built for survival, it makes sense that our minds will be more gravitated towards immediate issues rather than thinking about things that we've already got going for us. There's a saying that was passed down to me from a Dr. Cave video that I don't remember, so I'm gonna try my best to paraphrase. The saying goes something like, what does the caveman think of when he's secured fresh food to eat? Ooga booga, me need fresh water. It's meant to demonstrate that there's little utility in gratitude when you're worried about survival. But as society sophisticates and we move higher up on that fucking triangle of needs, I forget what that's called. Wow, great video, good video. Was it Maslow's hierarchy of needs? We see that training yourself to practice gratitude is actually really useful. Let me ask, what do you think happens when you've achieved something but you only ever think about what you have still yet to achieve? What happens when you want to get better at drawing, but every time you do draw, you focus on how bad it is rather than the idea that every single drawing contributes to greater competency at drawing?
Hey, we can write and exercise and learn how to cook and try to be social, which you remember when you tried to be social and you were filled with anxiety and you went to a party and no one talked to you and it was a really, really painful experience. As soon as you leave, does your mind tell you, man, you made huge progress today, right? You actually like got up off your ass and you went to a party, and sure, it was rough, but you did a good job, kid. Like, good job. That's not what your mind said. Your mind says never again.
Gratitude is the process of rewiring your brain so you're learning not to associate actual progress with internal punishment. Because how are you expected to progress in life when every time you do progress, you internally punish yourself with negative thoughts? A dingus. Part 4! Journey to find the star! I don't know why I'm doing it like this. I could just say part 4, Journey to find the star. So whatever is responsible for creating the wishing star, or even the wishing star itself, is acting with some kind of an agenda. Fucking weird. Kind of weird, right? Kind of scary. And I think Therapy Dog and the Magic Wishing Star are in cahoots working together. Stay with me. I've got, there's something here. There's something to that, I think. So there's a map that acts as instructions on how to locate the star. The map shows that the path to the star is littered with trials that the characters have to overcome in order to reach the star. However, the trials on the path change depending on who is observing the map. It really seems like the personalized trials are meant to teach each character something about themselves. Let's take a look at the trials and see what they say about the individual characters. Puss's trials are:
the Valley of Incineration, over Undertaker Reach, through the Cave of Lost Souls.
The trials are related to Puss's fear of death. It's about death. Kitty's trials are:
Swamp of infinite sorrows, mountains of misery, the abyss of eternal loneliness.
All the trials are related to Kitty's loneliness and hurt from betrayal. Both Kitty and Puss sidestep their trials and just rather take the Therapy Dog's trials because it seems easier to navigate. Interestingly, the dog's path isn't designed to teach the dog anything. It's actually still designed to teach Puss and Kitty stuff about themselves. Because the dog's working with the star. It's there has to be there's something, and they're all kind of like therapeutic, spiritual, maybe lessons, kind of. I like to look at it more through a therapy lens, but you could probably do a similar reading with some kind of spiritual lens. I don't know.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Put lettuce in there.
So the Pocket Full of Posies trials is meant to teach them about gratitude, as discussed before, and the River of Relaxation is akin to mindfulness or meditation to me. Puss thus far has always been performing the role of the legend, and the legend doesn't have time to just relax. He always has to be doing some crazy stunt or adventure or song or whatever. And Kitty could never relax because of her history with trust issues, so she's always on high alert to avoid betrayal. The River of Relaxation gives both of them the space to be quiet with themselves, undistracted by adventures or anxiety of betrayal. During this time of inactivity, Puss is forced to acknowledge the discomfort he's in due to his facial hair. So this may seem kind of silly, but herein lies the benefits of meditation, at least for me. We distract ourselves all the time with movies, games, shows, watching video essays, making video essays. There's a lot of things that we give our attention to, and usually last in that picking order is how we're feeling. And sometimes feelings are overwhelming or hurt too much to deal with, so it's easier to kind of just engage with other things until those feelings dissipate. I have like 5 projects I should be working on right now, but do you think I'm giving that any attention? No, because it's overwhelming and draining, and I don't want to deal with it right now, so I'll put it off to the last minute like I always fucking do. Oh, every day is hell. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's important to acknowledge when things are bothering you because they're bothering you for a reason. And if you don't acknowledge them, you'll never be able to address what your mind and body is trying to tell you to address. Especially if every time those feelings come up, you just distract yourself until they go away. The type of meditation that I gravitate towards is an excuse to take away all possible distractions that are stopping me from feeling whatever I'm supposed to feel. So I just sit there with my eyes closed and then cry. So I just sit there with my eyes closed and then whatever comes up, and I just allow myself to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling. The River of Relaxation does just that, and without any immediate things that could distract him, Puss's awareness of his discomfort is so painful he actually asks Kitty for help. This is important because Puss really struggles to admit when he needs help, and this is the first time we see him actually do it. We're seeing actual change in behavior for the better, and it's all thanks to the fucking River of Relaxation. After this, Goldilocks and the 3 bears get a hold of the map. Goldie's single trial is called Nostalgic Pines, which to me represents a pretty important practice in therapy, revisiting the past for insight which we can use to help devise strategies to improve our current lives. And when looking for the origin of behavioral patterns or cognitive temperaments, say it with me, the money's often in childhood. The trial teaches Goldie to acknowledge where the desire of having a real family comes from, eventually recognizing that the initial pain of abandonment clouded her perception, inhibiting her ability to recognize the amazing family she had within the 3 bears. Later, Puss becomes trapped in his 3rd trial, the Cave of Lost Souls, where he is confronted by all his past lives who try to entice Puss into abandoning his friends and claiming the wish for himself to become the legend once again. They do this by showing him various moments of his life. First, they show him being praised by people, from town to town. They show him partying, from party to party. They show him riding on a horse by himself. Puss in Boots walks alone. And that last line causes Puss to have an epiphany, or in therapy terms, a breakthrough. Remember when I said Puss thought his life's purpose was to be the legend? Well, he's just become disillusioned to that idea. Puss realized he was always unfulfilled, and the legend was just a distraction from the emptiness of his life. It's actually the opposite of what Puss initially thought. The legend was actively inhibiting him from living a fulfilling life.
Patience, love, and gratitude are not glamorous. They are work, but they will allow you to cultivate meaningful relationships. Alternatively, getting everything you want, being worshipped, and shirking responsibility is very fun and flashy, but it costs you your soul and will leave you rotting inside, a slave to the cult of pleasure and self instead of a servant to a higher good.
I love how effective all the trials are in illustrating some kind of benefit to therapeutic practices. I think it's easy to feel stuck in life and lose hope of any meaningful change occurring. So when we take Puss from the beginning of the film and compare him to Puss at the end of the film, it's utterly heartwarming.
You know, the universe is dark and scary, and maybe your life is meaningless, and maybe we're all just sitting around waiting to die, we're all just running out the biological clock, but we're not gonna die today. And things can be made better.
Swag. Change is possible, and there's a roadmap that you can use to achieve that change. You just need to ask people for help. Go to therapy. I think the most important change for Puss in this movie is him letting go of his ego, or letting go of the legend. Becoming okay with asking for help, being vulnerable, and potentially coming off as incompetent. So I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10, the badass seal of approval. What a wholesome movie. Except that it kind of fucks over Jack and Kitty a little bit. Let me explain. Part 47. I lost count. Jack and Kitty. Jack and Kitty? Jack and Kitty. Starting with Jack. So Jack's plan is to let other people do all the dirty work, not engaging with any of the trials which are meant to teach the characters about themselves, this insight helping them to be less miserable. But true introspection isn't following someone else's journey and just watching them grow. It's not about watching self-help videos. It's a personal, active process. You can't just be an observer, following a path. You have to be actively engaging with something. You can watch as many psychology videos about the benefits of therapy, but until you actually go, you will not see any of those benefits yourself. By refusing to introspect to obtain his desires, the movie punishes Jack by explosion. As a character, he's kind of fucked over, but as a lesson for the audience, he's kind of effective. The movie says really loudly and clearly that this is the fate of those who refuse the call of introspection. The fate of those who never allow themselves the opportunity to figure out their own issues. Congratulations, you reached the star first, and your reward is explosion. That's cool, but Kitty's thing is less cool. Kitty has been hurt emotionally over and over again, so she's learned to avoid trusting people as to avoid that hurt. But on some level, she realizes that not being able to trust anyone is a miserable existence. So after watching this film a bunch of times, I would like to think that Kitty learns to let herself trust people again, even though they have the capacity to one day betray that trust. Because a life of avoiding hurt is one where you're also inadvertently avoiding meaningful, fulfilling relations. So I would like to think that, but this is what actually occurs. Kitty learns to forgive Puss through understanding for betraying her in the past, and puts her trust in him again, and then Puss betrays her again, and she forgives him again through understanding again. Doesn't that feel just a little bit hollow? Does it feel like she's actually learned something about herself? Or does she just learn to forgive Puss again because he's changed? Where's her change? What's to stop someone else from betraying her in some capacity later down the line? Having your expectations disappointed by someone is kind of a human experience. It's unavoidable, I would say. What is she gonna do when that happens again? Forgive them? What about that happening on a bad day when forgiveness doesn't come so easily? I don't think the origin of that hurt is coming from Puss's betrayal. I think it's come from the years of betrayal she's experienced throughout her life. Because even after she's forgiven him, he betrays her again, and all those same feelings come flooding back. She's still holding on to something, and that something is gonna keep coming back up every time there's betrayal in her life. Finding someone you can trust is cool, but it doesn't address that actual initial pain that you felt from all those years of being betrayed in the first place. Kitty's wish of having someone to trust totally misses the point of why she doesn't trust in the first place. Kitty gets her wish, but it's not gonna fix her trust issues. She needs to go back and reconcile with her past like she did with Puss. Is Santa Coloma actually the origin or the root of why you mistrust people, or is it farther down the line than that? Something's still up there, and I think she still has a lot more work to do down the line. But you know what? So do I. Part 11, conclusion. Puss in Boots 2 was a deeply spiritual movie for me. Some people do DMT, I watch cartoon shows for children. So what do I think is the takeaway of this movie? What do I think is the overall encompassing nice wrap up a little bow message that'll leave this video feeling satisfying?
What does it mean? Like, what does it really...
What is the little bow I can tie on this whole video that'll make you feel like you didn't waste your time watching this? I think put very simply, it's there's more value in understanding why you want something rather than obtaining that thing you desire. Wishes, wants, desires are your mind's answer to a problem, and it tells you that the solution is to be obtained externally. But if the problem begins in your mind, then the solution involves addressing the problem at its root, not externally. Not by chasing after some wish, but by learning more about yourself and where this desire is coming from. Why do you want this thing so bad in the first place? What is that? What is that within you? It's that understanding that's more valuable than any magic wishing star could ever be. Also, side note, Puss in Boots was in Hot Ones. I don't have a reason for saying this, I just thought you should know. Thanks for stopping by. Stay tuned for the next one. Okay, cool.
You, of all people, should have a wish.
I already have a comfy sweater and 2 best friends. I got everything I could wish for. No magic required. Hmm?